This is part two of a Bible study recorded on August 22nd, 2018.
Okay. All right. Let's give some historical background here. And by the way, just maybe you want to know this, maybe you don't. So how do we know about places like Pergamum? Well, the Romans were very good historians, and you have people like Tacitus and Pliny the Younger, and then you have nice modern historians who've done us a lot of good, taking writings like that and Josephus and making them palatable and accessible. So you have, for example, Edward Gibbon, and you have Will Durant and other people who've sort of given us the Reader's Digest of these places. So we know quite a lot about them. Pergamum was the center of pagan religion in Western Asia. On the mountain range, there was a shrine to Zeus. There was in the city a temple dedicated to the worship of the emperor, and there was also the great temple of Athena. So this is a highly pagan society, and the ancient world didn't have a separation of religion and everyday life in the way that we think about it. That's sort of a new idea in the human world, this idea that you could have a private life and a public life that might have some overlap, but also might have some real differences. And in the ancient world, those things were quite overlapped. And to make matters worse, there was definitely an overlap in the professional economic world. So when Jesus talks about giving, hey Elizabeth, when Jesus talks about giving them a white stone and a new name and some manna, here's the background of that. In order to work as an artisan or a tradesperson, you had to belong to a guild. You had to belong to a crafts guild or artisan guild, and in order to belong to that, the members had to vote on you. And this is where we get the image of being blackballed. So if you were an initiate, every member would be given a white stone, black stone. Then a bag would be passed. And this is how they vote on you. And they drop one in there. And then they would take and put all the rest of the stones back in a pile. Then they dump the stones out on the table. And if you had even one black ball in there, if you had one black stone, you were out. And of course, you wouldn't know who voted against you. You would only know that you had been blackballed. But if you were accepted, you would be given a name for that would be used only in that guild, and they would throw a feast for you. The problem for Christians is that a lot of times this feast would include pagan worship and pagan practices, perhaps such as an orgy or drug use or drunkenness, and or sacrifices to pagan gods. And so the economic pressure for Christians to conform in order to be able to participate economically was immense. And again, because these things weren't separated as private and public spheres, you can imagine being a Christian and trying to explain why, you didn't want to take a hallucinogenic, or why you didn't want to participate, even though they had been kind enough to put up money to bring in some cult prostitutes. Your neighbors would say, well, what do you mean you don't want to participate in this? Yeah, I can't, guys. So Jesus says, even if everyone else votes against you, I'm voting for you. And even if you're not given a name to be a part of that family, I'm going to give you a name. And if you're excluded from the feast, you won't be excluded from the feast I'm going to set for you. And okay, so that's the ancient background. Imagine our context, ways that people might be excluded or might be shut out from community or not welcome. So last night I got to talk to one of our members who was talking about the AA community, and this person was talking about how there were a lot of Christians in the AA community that because they had gone through a rough time, because they had done some bad things sometimes, that some of them didn't feel like they could be welcomed at the church. Now, is that internal or is that really, external? But for whatever reason, they felt excluded. And you can imagine, other ways in which people might feel excluded. If you, at lunch, I'm going to go down to the Indian restaurant. We do have a small Indian population and Punjabi population, but it's tiny. And you can imagine what it must be like to be a Punjabi, in Western Tennessee. I bet, maybe sometimes you might not feel real included. And here's Jesus saying, I'll vote for you. I'll welcome you. I'll give you a name. And I'll love you. Okay.
Eddie, let me share
Yeah.
something. I love this little Quest study Bible. But you're talking about some of the sins and the sins of the flesh.
Yeah.
One of the things it notes in here, it says that Nicholas of Antioch had taught falsely that Christian freedom and the insignificance of the physical body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, you will go on to, in your soul and the significance of
Right.
your soul. The insignificance of the physical body permitted believers to engage in sexual immorality
Yep.
and other offenses without consequence. I thought that was pretty
Yeah.
interesting. It's like, okay, well, the body really doesn't matter. It's just your soul and your spirit. So you can do whatever you want with your body.
Yeah. Which is a form of something called Gnosticism, which is this idea that we're just really a ghost and that this body is just really a shell. That's not actually what the scriptures teach. The Bible teaches that the body is a sacred thing. That the body's the temple of the Holy Spirit, and that physical creation is important, and so yes, if you discount the human body, if you discount physical things, you say, well, I'm just a ghost. I'll just take care of the ghost inside. Forget the body. That's not really what Scripture teaches. It teaches that the body is precious. So one of the questions that I'm asked sometimes is about things like cremation. Is cremation a sin? Well, no, cremation's not a sin, but whatever we do with the body in interment should be done with the utmost care and respect and dignity and profound, the other way around, sorry, profound, not profane, profound sacredness. Because, yes, there is more to me than my body, but not less to me. So, when my child kisses me or kisses my face, they kiss me. When my spouse holds my hand, she holds me. The human body is of immense sacred worth, and so yeah, we're not permitted to just treat it like it's junk. And as it pertains to a sexual ethic, it's not that the Bible teaches that sex is yucky and we just we save it for the one we love best. It's profoundly sacred. That's why there's so much care taken about it, because it's not just a full contact sport. It's something of sacred worth. And so we treasure it and care for it and protect it. Okay, great, that's awesome. All right, chapter 2, verse 18 through 29.
Okay. These are the words of God's Son, whose eyes are like a fiery flame. By the way, I've got a CEB, Common English Bible. Okay?
Perfect.
Okay, fiery flame, whose feet are like fine brass. I know your works, your love, and your faithfulness, your service and endurance. I also know that the works you have done most recently are even greater than those you did at first. But I have this against you. You put up with that woman, Jezebel, who calls herself a prophet. You allow her to teach you to mislead my servants into committing sexual immorality and eating food sacrificed to idols. I gave her time to change her heart and life, but she refuses to change her life of prostitution. Look, I'm throwing her into a sickbed. I am casting those who have committed adultery with her into terrible hardship. If they don't find their hearts from following her practices, and I will even put her children to death with disease. Then all the churches will know that I am the one who examines minds and hearts, and that I will give to each of you what your actions deserve. As for the rest of you in Thyatira,
Yep.
those of you who don't follow this teaching and haven't learned the so-called deep secrets of Satan, I won't burden you with anything else. Just hold on to what you have until I come. To those who emerge victorious, keeping my practices until the end, I will give you authority over the nations, to rule the nations with an iron rod and smash them like pottery, just as I received authority from my Father. I will also give them the morning star. If you hear this, listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches.
Okay. All right. And okay, there's a lot going on there, isn't there? Okay. Let's go backwards here and see see first of all what's being promised, and then we'll see what's at stake here. First of all, you got this imagery of ruling the nations, which comes to us from like Psalm 2, Psalm 1, Isaiah 2, and the imagery is of God creating a new world. There's a new world order being established, and an old world that's dying. And this new morning star, one of the early symbols of the resurrection, you can find this in the writings of 1st, 2nd Peter, is this idea that something new is being born and something old is dying. And what the primary issue going on in Thyatira is that you've got Christians that can't let go of the old order of things. In fact, they're trying to blend them with the following of Jesus, and by doing it, they're not only diluting, they're even perhaps in a deadly compromise, ruining what it means to follow Jesus. Now, this is more challenging than it might seem, because the problem is we always live in our cultural context, and we're usually blind to the sins of our own context. So, for instance, it's easier to see issues when we look at other nations. We can usually pick out the faults of other cultures. We can say, oh my gosh, they're worshiping their nation above God, or they're putting their nation above the needs of the world, or they're polygamous and they're trading their women, and it's harder to figure out what are those things in our cultural context that are at odds with our faith. Mm-hmm. And there are things, and there will always be things, no matter what context you live in. So, for instance, we'll take one from history. John and Charles Wesley were, and you remember this from last study, their primary reaction was, everybody in England thinks that they're a Christian. And yet you've got all kinds of things that are incompatible with being a Christian, such as slave trade, such as the treatment of the coal miners, which made up about a fifth of the population. They were the backbone of the Industrial Revolution, and yet they were like cogs in a wheel, and their life value to everybody else was something like an animal, and even the church didn't want them, and there was a proliferation of massive alcoholism. I mean, man, alcoholism was rampant in the Britain of the 18th century. And John said, but it is hard to preach repentance, a new birth, when everybody already thinks they're in the door.
Like this content, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe for new content.